Kim. So tell me a little bit about your group.
Well, I have a Tier 3 third grade group, 2 students, a boy and a girl. And currently I am just now moving them to a 20. We tried, we've done several 18s, and I started a new series just yesterday. And the 18 was simply too easy. I'm not at their zone of proximal development. Is that how you say that?
That is how you say it. Proximal development.
Anyway,
So
I'm not there, so I'm going to jump to the 20, but it is a big jump, and so I'm going to be very interested to see how it goes.
So you're pretty confident from their 18s that they're ready for this jump.
They have passed. Both of them have passed with very good scores. Several 18s. I wanted to make sure that they were really strong in that, and they've been using great strategies. So I really think it's time to jump up. And being third graders, of course, they really need to be doing this, much better than a 20. But it's a great way, a great place to get on this next semester.
So based on some of your running records, what are you noticing that they're being strategic on in their reading?
Both of them are use meaning, even with miscues. It does make sense, which of course is always wonderful. And they both have great retelling skills, so
great.
they know what they've read. So comprehension is wonderful, and most times errors are very similar visually as well, and make sense. So occasionally we have some syntax errors, and one student more than the other does struggle sometimes with grammar, the correct usage of tenses and things like that, but they both have grown a lot in that area as well, which I'm sure is part of their teacher.
Just that partnership between the two of you.
They both have very good teachers, and so they're being pushed in 2 times a day.
Right.
So that's great.
So using that meaning is really helping them, and then they can look visually to see what that word might be.
Very much so. Very much so. And they both have strong sound to letter relationships. Very good if a word can be sounded out. What they struggle with, is those irregular words, irregular spelling. And so we do work on those a little bit, usually every day, just for about 1 minute to 2 minutes, work on words that they need to know that are not a typical word.
They're not phonetically spelled.
Right. We work on that.
Is that part of your word work portion?
Actually, it is. Every day we spend about, like I said, 1 to 2 minutes on words that they need to know to be successful third graders, that they struggle to learn that other third graders might not.
Oh, great.
So we spend about a minute or two, and it's part of the routine. They know that.
Right, and which is important, that routine of coming in.
It is. And I still do the ABC chart with them, but we mix it up every day. We do something different every day, and I let them pick what we're going to do that day, and I'm surprised that they like it as much as they do, but they do.
Do you think that helps with that fluency of knowing the letters?
It always helps with that, knowing what letter that you want it, that you need to use. And I think too, I've been working on some dictionary skills, and you've got to have such a good understanding of the alphabet to know where to go, so that you're not thumbing through the whole thing. And so we do that about once every 2 weeks. We do dictionary work, and it's helping with that as well. So I just don't think you can do that too much.
Right, and I agree that's a great support for the classroom as well, because that's something that they're working on.
Right.
Do you see any of that word work or letter work start to transfer into their writing? Have you noticed anything?
Some. Their writing is weak for a third grader. And of course, and that's going to go hand in hand with that reading being not where it needs to be either. But some, yes. And I have noticed that the other thing that they are learning to do, they have a smaller spelling dictionary that they use with writing, and they go to that when they know, they know I don't know that word like I should.
Right.
And they go and look that up. And so all of that tied in together is helping with that some, yeah. But their writing is, it's just not, and it's not as detailed as it needs to be, of course. Lots of,
It looks like a lot of repetitive sentences.
Yeah. I do try, we talked about that word, like wit, yeah, it's a lot, just not a lot of creativity, as well as, which is funny because they both have very good speaking vocabularies. Like they can tell you things, but then when it comes to write it, it's just they're very hesitant. Very hesitant.
Do you see some change over time in her from when you started?
Not as
at the
much as I
beginning?
would like. Now, I have seen more with this student than I have with, for instance, here's the word because. When we started writing back in September, that wasn't a word that he knew. It was one of the words that we have worked on. But like, when we started, yeah, so he has definitely made some big gains. She has not made as much as I would like. But he has started like that, like I said, and then has gained a lot.
Do you consider some of that transfer coming from your work with the no excuse words, your work with the fluent letter recognition and writing?
It all has to, yeah, I think it all helps, and one of the things though with them is that, and I feel like as a teacher that I'm struggling spending enough time working with them on the writing process. Just in that, we go over it, but I think I would need to spend more time going over that with them, and maybe more rewriting, more editing than what I feel like I've had time for. You really only end up with about 25 to 26 minutes by the time people get in, group gets out, and my groups are unfortunately back to back. And I constantly feel like, well, I've got this to do, and this to do, and this to do, and I feel like that gets looked over. And so that's really something I really need to focus on more, is that part.
So you're thinking a little bit more of the writing process, because you're not seeing them go through that and use that as a scaffold to get their best piece.
Well, and like, for instance, yesterday, we were discussing writing, and I said, now, what are the 3 ways, just prompting them, what are the 3 ways that you can end your sentence? What's the punctuation? And so we went over the whole thing, and so it wasn't just, ones that kept saying, well, dot, a dot, and I go, well, what do you call the dot? And eventually one of them said it, and I said, well, what does it mean? And they couldn't tell me that it meant to stop, they couldn't tell me those things. So we went over that yesterday, and it's probably be a focus for a little bit, just to make sure that they understand. And the funny thing is they read with the punctuation.
So that reciprocity between, again, is showing you, like you said earlier, that that's not there between the reading and the writing.
It's not. They read, if it has an exclamation point, then they both use that intonation, and they use that excited voice. But then when it comes to writing, it just doesn't, it's not going through. You're right, the reciprocity is not there.
Have you thought about, since right now you're using Guided Reading Plus for them, about mixing and matching maybe those interventions with maybe a writing aloud group?
Well, and I'm thinking, this is my 4th year with this. And the first year, maybe even the second year, I really just felt like a fish out of water coming from SPED, and I'm really starting to understand, how things intertwine together better. and I think at first I was hesitant to try to go flip-flopping because I didn't feel like I was in command enough to do that.
Right.
But I do think that we probably, I didn't start this group on that, I started them on Guided Reading Plus, but I really feel like probably and we'll see how this goes with the 20, but I feel like probably that we need to really focus on that writing, and so that probably is something that I maybe even should have done before now, but we've got the semester, so,
Right,
you know,
and third
maybe
semester, so-
maybe do some more of that, so.
Because if you think about it, like the reading and writing, everything writing aloud, reading and writing connections, vocabulary, word solving strategies,
Right.
and then that's the role of reading and the role of writing.
Right.
Organizing, that's what you said, composing message, editing and revising. So, you know, it would be nice because you'd still be getting in some of that modeling, more that what you said you
Right,
were kind of
right.
worried about not being able
Yeah.
to.
And I really do think that this group, you know, and it's funny because I've really just thought about it recently. Some of my other groups, I actually have done that. Because their reading was so far ahead of their writing that it was like, it was a neon sign.
Right.
But these guys, it's just really the last little bit that I'd like, we're just not real, we're not in the same level. That is
Right.
not a level 20 writing. You know, so we'll see. But yeah, I think
So-
you're right.
You've told me a lot about the group, how you know what you're going to make your focus for your lesson. What do you want the students to gain from this lesson? After you teach on Monday, what should they walk away with?
Right. Well, they're gonna definitely, come away with some new vocabulary. That's for sure, based on this moving up to a 20. There'll be some things that we'll go over. I tend to, when we do a picture walk together, to some degree. Now, this is a chapter book, and so we'll break it down into chapters. But there's some words in here that I think they're gonna have some trouble with. And so I'm gonna have to really show some strong support for this jump up. And I think they'll definitely come away with some new vocabulary. But I'm hoping too, that with the letter work or the word work that we're gonna do, that they might be able to, I don't see them breaking words as easily as they should. And we may be working on that too.
Which is, you know, I hear you saying, like, if they come to that new vocabulary, they might not understand it. So if you can give them a strategy of breaking that apart,
Right.
getting that word and then going back and rereading. So
Right.
it sounds like you have a plan of really trying to support them as they move up into this next level.
Right.
So kind of upping your support.
Well,
a
I'm
little
looking
bit.
like at the word joyfully, and they know joy, you know, but then you got it, you know, and they know full. But putting that together with that ending,
Right.
you know, we'll see if that comes to them, you know, like it should,
Right.
you know.
And it could be some, you know, that you can model during your word work, you know, this is, if I came to this word and I didn't know what
Yeah.
it was, here's the parts that I
Yeah,
could
and there's a
look for.
lot of names in this book that are not run-of-the-mill. I'm looking at Charlene, and
Right.
you know, things like that. There's some that are fine, like Chip, you know, but there's a Pamela, you know, things like that. So I'm thinking it's gonna be a lot for them to work through.
Right.
I'm really anxious to see how this works.
Right.
So-
I think it's a great choice for you to bring them up since you have all that data to be able to see, you know, what, where they're at and what they need to go to
Right,
next.
right,
So,
right.
what would you like for me to look on or look
Well,
for during the lesson?
I don't always have a third grade group. This is only my second third grade group I've ever had. So I worry that I'm not helping them move as fast as they can. And I'm wondering if the scaffolding that I'm giving is maybe too much. That I'm helping too much. And then I need to back up from that a little bit, you know,
So looking like if you're giving them the opportunity to actually take on some of that reading work, or if you're jumping in too quickly.
Right.
So that goes to that scale of help in apprenticeship and literacy where, you know, the level 1 is that very little assistance.
Right.
You try it versus that level 5, you
Right.
demonstrate the action or you give them the word.
Right.
So are you thinking you're more at one versus the other?
Well, I really feel like, that I probably have been more the 3, 4, 5, maybe giving too much, whereas, and not moving them, like I said, they had the 18 down cold, and I left them there probably a week or more longer than I should have. And of course, in our weather, school's been really messed up, so that hasn't helped at all. But I just don't know that if when we do like those picture walks, am I giving too much? Am I helping too much? Is there things they can get that I should not be doing? So anyway, that's what I'm looking at.
You might have to kind of adjust that a little bit because of them moving up to the next level.
Right.
Do you feel like that might just be
well, and I do, yes. And I do feel like that probably I am going to have to help, you know. And the other thing is when I say picture walk, you know, when we're talking about our younger students, we really do a picture walk. Well, we're going to a 20, that's a chapter book. It does have a few pictures, but it's not in any way, shape, or form going to give them the story.
Right.
Like a, you know, so I do think it's, you know, not really as much of a picture walk as just a book introduction, you know. But at the same time, you know, you want them to be successful, you know.
Right.
And it's not about frustrating them, it's about adding another layer of instruction,
right.
You know, so.
It's debugging the book, like what
yes.
Mari Clay says. So maybe just watch for their signals too.
Yes.
Because it's that delicate dance of, oh, they're starting to get it, so I'm gonna hold off a little bit. It's just being aware, and that's
right.
nice since it's only 2 in your group.
It is wonderful.
That you can really, really hone in on what they need.
I'm really fortunate, I feel fortunate that we are able to do those tier 3s that have just those small groups because, and I had 3 earlier and then one child went to special ed, but you're just able to do so much more. And then being 3rd graders, they're more responsible.
Right.
You know, so I'm not really, you know, I don't have to settle them down or anything like that. I mean, they come in, they get their stuff, they're ready to go.
That's great.
And they know the order. They know how they know how it's going to go. You know, so.
Well, it sounds like you really know your kids. You've really kept those records, so you know, and you've already been doing a lot of that adjusting as you go on. So it'll be neat to see how you use that scale of help on Monday.
Well, it'll be interesting for me too, I think.
Well,
we'll see we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
you know,
we'll work together. So.
Well,
any other last things that you want to talk about before Monday when you teach this group?
Well, I'll be anxious to see just what you think about the group as a whole, you know, and what kind of stuff I'm offering, you know. We'll just see how it goes. But yeah, so I think we're good.
Awesome.
I
Well,
hope so.
thank you, Kim, and we will do the lesson on Monday.
All right, sounds great.